What's up, everyone, and welcome back. You are watching Well-Rounded Individual. I'm your host, Adam Schindler. Guys, thank you so much for being here. If you are here and you love this show, please, if you haven't already, click that subscribe or follow button below. It just helps me grow this show and helps me just bring you more value. Today, I have another amazing guest. She is a Las Vegas local. She is a fitness professional, an IFBB pro, and she owns and operates her own business out of her own personal gym. Please welcome to the show, Liz Carrillo.
Hi, how are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. This is exciting.
Yes.
I'm glad I finally got in here, actually.
I know, right? We've had to postpone
Reschedule.
this once or twice, but we got it done.
Yes.
We're here. It's
I'm
happening.
excited.
So I knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. And I'm super happy that everything lined up and we got you in here right now.
Yes, me too.
Awesome. So before we get into everything, there's one question I always ask everyone. And with the name being Well-Rounded Individual, the name of the show, I always ask, what does that mean to you? What are some attributes or some characteristics of what you would define as or build in a well-rounded individual?
So for me, I think that it is a human being that the time on this earth, they spend ever evolving, ever growing with the ability to shift at any moment. With that being said, I also think it's someone that understands that how they do one thing, they tend to do everything. And that is at that foundation of kind of how you talk to people, how you move through your day, the choices that you make or don't make. So I just think it's somebody that's able to continue to evolve through adversity and through success, because sometimes we get success and we just stay stagnant because it's comfortable.
Mhm.
So I guess it's that, just somebody that's ever evolving in all aspects of who they are and how they want to move through this earth.
I love that. It's a never-ending process.
Never ending. It's a lot of work.
Excellence in all you do.
Yes. I don't know about excellence, actually.
Or the effort for excellence.
Yes, it's I think that's the E word,
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah.
I use that a lot actually in my coaching. It's about the effort.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing too, is because outcome isn't predetermined, right?
It's not.
And it's not up to you, the outcome. Your effort towards the outcome is all up to you.
And that's a hard lesson. I think it's something that I relearn less and less as I've gotten older. But it can be a heartbreaking lesson to learn when you're younger, and the focus is the outcome. It actually, and it can be very heartbreaking when you look back at your journey to that outcome that maybe at the end of the day, the last little things were out of your control and you didn't move through your journey as a present individual, and you almost robbed yourself of all of the learnings in that journey. So that's something that I can confidently say in the last 10 years has really allowed me to move through my journey with strength, I guess, and discipline, because the journey has become more of a priority for me. So when that outcome doesn't end up being what you hoped it would be, even in my competitions, right? I'm much more relaxed when I compete, because I know that I did everything I was supposed to do in that journey. And at the last minute, maybe there's just somebody that showed up and had a different look or a better package or whatever. And I'm able to let's go get some food. And people are just you're not upset. And I'm no, I did everything I was supposed to do. I grew so much from this. That outcome can't identify who you are as a human being, because it will be heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah.
Or it'll be short-lived. Even if you win, you're just kind of oh, well, that lasted 5 seconds.
What's next?
Yeah. What's next? And then it's you just never even give yourself a moment to just stop, because it was anticlimactic almost.
Yeah. And that's what's so important about putting the focus and on the process and the journey as the reward.
Yes.
Because I mean, I know this firsthand as well. There are times when I put everything I could into like a camp and did not get the result that I wanted.
Yeah.
Devastatingly. And when you're young, I think it's good for you to take those bumps and bruises along the way of focusing on an outcome, not getting that outcome and being disappointed, to know that, oh, that's not the true reward. Because if you get the reward, that like the outcome reward all the time, you never really truly learn a lesson. And then imagine that, like, you get what you wanted all the time, then all of a sudden you haven't gone through anything tough.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden something happens, you're in your 30s or your 40s and you're devastated. It's like, oh, that kind of devastation can be learned way before.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, like that, actually, with Thanksgiving around the corner, I always, you watch your family or your mom or whoever, and they like spend hours in the kitchen cooking, right?
Mhm.
And then it's like done in like 10 minutes. Everybody's just like,
Mhm.
and I never like understood putting that much effort.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's silly. And then you have to do dishes and whatever. But actually, now that I think about it, I bet you that, because I haven't done that for my family. So I bet you that like the gratification that maybe my mom or my grandma or whoever gets, like of preparing that meal, and like, even if it is just 10 minutes, it's like the time spent in the kitchen. And then like, I went by and said hi and we have a conversation. It's just like, kind of like that. Like
Mhm.
anything has to be about the journey. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of a single example where the journey doesn't take precedence over the outcome.
Right.
Yeah. No.
It's where all the
nothing.
fun is
Yeah.
had, too.
Yeah. It is where most of the fun is.
That's awesome. I mean, you've had quite a journey, born in Mexico City,
Yes.
migrated to the U.S. at 5,
Hmm.
and I was just in Mexico City. So
You
I
were.
love being able to say that and be able to have a visual of where
Yes.
you were.
A very big city.
Yeah, it's amazing. So tell me about your journey a bit. How did you get to, we see what you are now, this package of like IFBB pro, business owner, empowerer, coach, leader. What was the process and the recipe to get you?
Wow. Well, I think it was a lot of adversity. I don't think like adversity that I lived firsthand.
Mhm.
My mom had just graduated from law school, and my dad and her were separated. He had immigrated here illegally first.
Mm.
Then he went back, I think after living like 3 years here in the United States without us. And my mom's mentor had gotten executed on the railroad tracks. And so she was supposed to get hired at one of the biggest banks in Mexico City as their financial advisor. And they were going to give her the company car. We were going to go to the best private school. Like she was going to be in a pretty high paying, like very important position. And then once that happened, it just coincided with my dad coming back and being like, I love you. Let's be a family. Let's go, go do the American dream thing. And because of what just had happened, she was like, okay, yeah, let's get out of here. Like, cause if that's going to happen to a man,
Mm-hmm.
she's just much more vulnerable as a woman in that position. So we immigrated here. I still remember because we actually went to Disneyland first. We went to Disneyland and I had my little Belle dress that my grandma made, and my little brother was in his little like beast outfit. And then we flew from California to Las Vegas. We lived at the Excalibur for I think a week. So I was me and my brother were like, we live in a castle, And then there was an old casino on the strip that had like a fake roller coaster on it. We lived there for another week. And then we lived at Budget Suites on Harmon, kind of like where the old Hard Rock Virgin
Mm-hmm.
casino is now, for I think close to a year, if not longer. And to me, like looking back now, that is adversity. At the time, I didn't see it as adversity. My parents did a really good job of protecting us from like feeling like we weren't having a childhood, and how they did that with, as young as they were, and like the stressors of immigrating to a new place. My mom came from a very high education, being a lawyer and whatnot. So she spoke some English. My dad spoke like, even though he had been here for 3 years, he spoke like no English, and the English that he did speak was with a very thick accent, even to this day. When I started school, I didn't know any English. But again, my mom, like we'd come home from school, they were both working like 3 different jobs, and she would sit down and do hooked on phonics with us, like the cassettes
Yeah.
with like, yeah. And basically like it was just the language aspect. But again, that was adversity that looking back now, I remember as a little kid feeling like a little uneasy, you know, with like feeling like my shoes were different, my clothes were different. Definitely like didn't have like name brand stuff. And then added on top of that, like not speaking the language like how I thought a 5-year-old, 6-year-old should. Like I still remember that. And then getting put into a special class, like ESL, English as a second language. And then in first grade, I guess we just picked up the language very quickly. In first grade, I would get in trouble all the time for talking too much. So I was just always in trouble for talking too much. And I think it's because I was just like, I felt like I was trying to catch up, you know? So I think that even as a little kid, if I don't remember the specific incidences, there was always adversity, like at the forefront.
Right.
So with that being said, as I, you know, continued to grow up, my parents like did well. They worked really hard. We went from really horrible neighborhoods, bad apartment complexes to like we owned a house, you know? And then at 14, like right when I thought I was like, oh, like I'm hanging out with the cool kids at school now, you know, like, oh, I'm good at soccer. Oh, I'm pretty athletic. Like people like that, you know? My parents got divorced and I just like lost it. I think that I was very dependent on the label that my parents are still married because Mexican cultures tend to not get divorced as easily, right? Or not easily, but they as often. At least that's what my perception was. So even if my friends had nicer cars, their parents had nicer cars, they had nicer homes, they had better clothes, they, you know, came with money to school for like snacks or whatever. My parents weren't divorced. And that was like, well, your parents are divorced, mine aren't divorced, you know? So when they were getting divorced, I just felt like, well, now what do I have, you know? So with that, I just like rebelled a lot. My mom had to work even harder because my dad just kind of like left. I had a really, really bad relationship with my dad when that happened. He just didn't really put being a parent as a priority. It was more of like fighting with my mom and like doing weird things, like breaking into our house, like just a lot of stuff that like I remember just like not being healthy for my brother and I to see, nor should I think it should be how a parent should like address something like that, you know? So with my mom being gone a lot, I like was able to sneak out. I started partying a lot. I grew up here in Vegas. So like people that aren't from Vegas, like they're like, how did you grow up in Vegas? Like, isn't that terrible? And the thing is like it's nature versus nurture, right? So like if even with my mom working as much as she did, and then my grandma came and lived with us and my aunt and my cousins. So we had like all these typical like Mexican stereotype. It literally was that. Like we had so many people living in our house at one point. And then even with that much love and like connection and like attention to us, my mom could only do so much when she became a single mom, essentially. And so I would sneak out. I started drinking alcohol at like age 15. And when I say drinking, like it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna have a beer at a party. I can't imagine if I had a 15-year-old and they were at a party drinking a beer, let alone what I was doing. Like I was like beer bonging Jose Cuervo. Like it was again that thing of like getting attention and like being like, look at what I can do. I can outdrink all the boys. I can do that, you know?
I have almost an exact same story of like divorce.
Did you grow up here in Vegas?
No, except for that. Except for that. A different place, but like I'm relating. I understand what your brain was doing because mine did the same thing.
It's what is that? Is it just I think it's just like I don't know, like I just wanted to be so very like intense about everything.
I feel like
it was like a control thing too. Like, I don't know, like I
think
wanted to
that
grow
age.
up really quickly too. And with me being a girl and my father being the one that like, was just removed himself out of the picture, he didn't like necessarily fight for us, or I don't think he like, hey, like act like an adult, don't throw a tantrum so that you can see your kids or whatever,
Mhm.
I think that I definitely wanted male attention.
Mhm.
And like, I didn't feel like I was the prettiest girl. Like my features are very different than like all the girls I hung out with and everything. But like, oh, that girl can beer bong Jose Cuervo, that little 5'1" like girl. Oh, like she can run so fast. Like, oh, we wanted her on our soccer team. Like it was this constant like pleasing and like wanting to be like identified as something like special or like special attention, but is specifically for
Mhm.
male, like from anyone that was male. So that continued probably until I was like about 17. And then my mom met my stepdad. And that was like you have these moments in life that you're like, if this hadn't happened, like who knows what would be happening, right? So when my mom met my stepdad, I was so mean to him. Like I was terrible. My husband says it all the time. Like he's like, you were probably like really mean to your little brother. And I tend to have a strong personality. I tend to be bossy. Um, and at the time, all those were like negative characteristics. Now I think that I've done a pretty good job at making sure that I use those as strengths in a positive way rather than like in a negative way.
Mhm.
But back then, like I definitely think that my stepdad coming into the picture and he didn't react. That was the first time because my dad was very reactive. Like
Mhm.
I love my dad and I'm not sitting here like talk like me and my dad have a great relationship right now.
Mhm.
But his father was very abusive to him and so he was very abusive to my brother. He was never abusive to me, but I had to watch him be abusive to my brother.
Mhm.
And as a young child feeling like hopeless, like I can't help my brother,
Mhm.
um created a lot of anger for me towards my dad. But I was such a daddy's girl. It was so weird. It's so
Mhm.
messed up. Human beings are so weird and so messed up. So I it was the first time that I was like, wait, like I'm bad and he's not like losing his shit or like going and hitting my brother like or hitting my mom. Like this is interesting. And it's slowly like he just slowly started to work his way in. And then I started getting in fights at school. I apparently was good at fighting. So, I went to this high school out here that used to be a women's prison. It's called Chaparral, and they had this huge courtyard. And this girl had some beef with my girlfriend, and I wasn't even part of the conversation. But I was like, "Yeah, I'll walk up to her with you." Like she was like all nervous, and I'm not even listening to what's going on, and she just like takes a swing or like pushes her or something, and I'm, like, thinking about what I'm gonna have for lunch, and then all of a sudden, I was, like, just in the fight, like, they weren't even fighting, I was just, like, fighting, and my stepdad came to pick me up, and I wasn't nervous, I felt good, like, I didn't realize how much anger I had built up from,
Mhm.
like, my parents getting divorced, my mom marrying this new guy, not telling us about it, like, she went married him, then was like, "Oh, we're married," I'm like, "What?"
Well, yeah.
So when he picked me up, I remember he like looks down at me, very tall man. My dad was not very tall, but he was a very tall man. He is a very tall man. And he's like, "Do you feel better now?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, let's go." Like that was it. And then like, my mom was the one that sat down and like talked to me about it or whatever. But that like really made me start, I think the anger started to like seep like I wasn't so angry anymore. So I was
Mhm.
able to like be more present and like really reevaluate the friendships I was having. Like, I was hanging out with all these older kids, and I'm like, I don't want to be 22 doing drugs and drinking in some apartment complex with a 17-year-old. Like, I just a lot, I don't know what clicked. And I'm like, my parents worked so hard to even get us to this country. Like, what they're doing is terrible. Like they're losers, like that's what I'm like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be a loser. Like I and part of it again was I think to one day be able to be like, in spite of my dad not being here, look at what I have done. And also I didn't want to not have money. Money was a huge motivator for me in my life and everything that I did. because we grew up without any money. And a lot of the fights that I saw between my dad and my mom were because of money. And so I just wanted that to never be an issue for me. And I'm like, they're losers. I'm not going to have money if I'm a loser. So I need to like get out of this, like whatever funk I'm in. I got accepted to community college high school. So I actually started going to college my junior year of high school. Terrible idea. I mean, great idea for somebody like me because it got me out of like those group of people.
Right.
But I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to do communications. I want to broadcast. And like, I would change my major every semester. So I actually never graduated from college. I have like a bunch of college credits that never amounted into any kind of degree. And I was like, you know what? I need a break from this. Like I've been going to community college since my junior year. So I graduated at 18. Then at 20, I was like, let me try this massage school thing. And I went to massage school. I loved being in massage school. That's the first time that I really started to like love human anatomy, the physiology of it all, the pathology of it all. Like I loved going to cadaver lab and like looking at the tendons and ligaments. And like, that's actually what propelled my transition into fitness kind of. I massaged, I think, for like 6 months after I graduated. And then I realized I didn't like to touch everyone.
Yeah.
I'm like,
you don't get to choose.
You can't be like that. No, you don't get to choose. I actually only massaged boxers because I was working out at a boxing gym. And they had their clothes on and that was more like sports massage. But then like when I started doing my clinical hours right before I graduated, I was like, yeah, I don't like touching everyone. So that kind of was just like that happened. And then I didn't pursue that. I turned 21 and then I'm like, oh, if you're a girl and you're even somewhat good looking in the city, you can make a lot of money. And I have always been very outgoing. My mom is like, you know, she worked all the way from working at Del Taco when we immigrated here to, you know, making over $200,000 with her own farmer's insurance. So like, I have had an amazing example in my mother of like just hard work, sales, being outgoing. I mean, she was like that mom where like if we went to breakfast, she would be giving like her farmer's insurance card to like the waiter or like, hey, is the owner here? And I'd be so embarrassed. Like, oh my gosh, mom, like stop. But like all of that rubbed off on me. And so I became really good at interviewing. I became really good at just like sales and I started working in the industry and then I started making money. And then once you start making money, you're kind of like, but what makes me happy? So that's when I started just working out a lot because working out made me happy. Once I started working out, one of my coaches was like, hey, like, oh no, I started working out. Then I became a fitness group instructor. So I started teaching Pilates and got certified in that. But to me, that's so different than one-on-one coaching, right?
Oh, yes, totally different.
Totally different. Like, I feel like group fitness is such it's a instant gratification because the class is done and like 20 people or 10 people, whatever, come up to you and they're like, that was a great class. And you're just like, oh, you're welcome. Or they're like, that class sucked, your music sucked. And you're like, oh, okay, well, but you know immediately. Whereas like with one-on-one coaching, it's a journey. You know, like we're dropping body fat percent slowly. We're increasing lean muscle. We're figuring out all the, you know, vital voids in that person. Like it's not instant gratification.
You're developing a much more intimate relationship, a long-term relationship with these people, right?
Yeah. So I didn't think that I would do well as like it was not even something that I thought of that I wanted to do. And my coach, he was like, hey, because he was expanding his gym and whatnot. And I was there all the time. I was like there all the time. And he's like, hey, you should really get certified. Like you could be a personal trainer. He would start to pair me up with other girls and he'd like go off and do something. He'd be like, hey, can you just watch her do that? And so like slowly he started like showing me that I could do it. Right. And I'm like, oh, actually like, this sounds cool. And I didn't have a lot of pressure because I was cocktailing, making very good money. I worked 3, maybe 4 nights a week. And then, so I had that buffer financially to kind of like, okay, let me go pay for this exam or, you know, like, sure, let me pay rent and see what happens. Like I wasn't necessarily making money in the beginning, And again, that's a lot of privilege, right? The privilege, like, I got called privileged the other day. So it's fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, your privilege came from hard work and through, I don't think that, yeah, that's privilege but I think you earned that privilege. That wasn't a privilege that you just walked out with.
yes, thank you. And I agree with that. When I got called privileged, not going to talk about politics, but it had to do with political views. And I think that this person was just surprised by my political views, especially I just went through an ectopic pregnancy. I've had 3 abortions. My parents immigrated here from Mexico City. And I think that, and I post a lot about food and nutrition. And, I'm hopeful that the new administration is going to make some changes in our agencies that are supposed to protect us from what goes into our bodies. But I don't have any strong political beliefs as far as a party. I'm more about what should be a priority. And to me, health should be a priority, because if you're not a healthy individual, then you can't do anything about those other beliefs that you have.
Exactly.
Because guess what? The moment you're sick, that's all that matters. Literally, you cannot do anything if you can't get out of bed. You can't fight for that cause or for that belief or how you think that law should be. And so I speak on that a lot on my social media. And I think that this person just was surprised that I didn't follow what she thinks I should have followed after the election.
She was surprised that you thought for yourself.
Or that, I guess, or that because of my background, And so when I explained, look, I understand that these abortion laws are a very complicated subject. And hey, I'm part of an organization out here in Nevada where if somebody can't get the abortion abortion help that they need in those states that have certain things banned, you can actually contribute money and, help these people with travel costs, help them find a place to stay while they get the care that they need to here, right? I just like to be proactive about things rather than just get upset about things, right? And I said, and I just had an ectopic pregnancy where I did have to take methotrexate, which is chemotherapy, essentially to kill dividing cells, right? And they were just, I guess, concerned that I wasn't more outraged about these rights that we've lost, right? And so they're like, well, what a privilege it was for you to be able to get that care. That was that's very privileged. And so I don't disagree with this person. It is a privilege, just like it is a privilege that I had a mom that set this amazing example for me, that I had the privilege of, having my mom and dad's looks that made me somewhat, because let's face it, if you're a little bit attractive in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and you are personable or whatever, you can make a lot of money in the service industry. That was not the same case for my brother or my cousin, they're males. So their hard work looked different than my hard work, but there's privilege in everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid and I'm not ashamed of my privilege, because you can have privilege, and if you don't put in the hard work, if you're not willing to move through life, even if you're afraid, right? Because we're going to be afraid of a lot of things. I was nervous coming here to do this podcast. But I just feel like this privileged word is a thing that people are afraid to be called or afraid to be labeled. And it's if you really take an introspective look at your life and at your journey, I feel like we all have some kind of privilege. Right. So I don't know. I got so off track. So then I started coaching clients. I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was always cocktailing. So I kind of never went for it full time, but I always had 1 or 2 clients here or there. Then I started competing, did a few shows, didn't really know how to do it the right way. So by genetics, I think I just kind of did well. Then I was I don't want to do this. I don't like not winning, and I'm not willing to do the things that it actually takes to win all the time. So I stopped doing that.
When was this?
So my first shows were in 2013, 2014.
Okay.
I did my first NPC shows, and I placed 2nd and 3rd. And then I just would cheat and eat the peanut butter, or I knew nothing about nutrition at that time, right? So then in around 2016 is when I started dabbling in coaching. And then I just was like, maybe I'll do real estate. Because again, money was a huge motivator for me. So at the time I was like, how much can you really make personal training? You know, like I just had not a huge exposure to it other than the trainers that I had. And I saw how much I paid them. And I'm like, I don't know, like if I'm ever going to be this good to have that many clients or clients that will pay me that much, which now I charge more than those coaches charged me. But at the time I was like, I don't know, like I want to make money. I want to be like, I just want to be independent. I don't ever want to need a man, whatever, blah, blah. So I did real estate and I did well at real estate. I did well at real estate without trying very much. But again, like there's this, like I almost feel bipolar at times because like I'm so driven. At that time, not anymore, but I was so driven by money and like materialism and being independent and not relying on anyone. But then if something didn't keep my attention, if it didn't light up like this passion in me, I just, especially if it came easy, I easily got bored. So I did real estate for about a year. And then I was just like, I don't want to get up for this. Like, I'm not passionate about this. I would work at the nightclub until 5:30 a.m., 6 sometimes. And then I'd go do an open house at 9:30. And it wasn't the getting up early and like doing that. It's just that like I wasn't excited. But if I had a client at 9:30, even though I was making like pennies, I couldn't wait to go train that client. I had this program. Like, I wonder how they're going to like this exercise or whatever. Like, I couldn't wait to get into the gym. So that's how I got into coaching.
I love it.
Basically.
And so that was around 2016?
Yeah. So I became a person. I went full time. I didn't go full time until the pandemic. And that's just because I actually traveled with this company called True Fusion and helped open up franchises.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
For about a year, which was such a cool experience. That was another like amazing journey with that. I don't know. I just learned so much, you know, and I got to travel to Miami. I lived in the Hamptons.
Yeah, I remember watching your journey on that because I met you through True Fusion because I used to take your classes, and I don't know if you remember this, but I had moved here in 2015. But I moved here in 2015, and I was working through a healthcare provider, but I was doing weight loss nutrition coaching, and I've been training my whole entire life, and I was like trying to transition on like I wanted to train, but like here, but I didn't really know anyone yet. So I remember I used to always take your classes because they were great.
Oh, thank you.
I remember like coming to you and I was like, hey, like, you know, what do you think I should do? And you're like, basically you were just like, yeah, just start making connections and like, yada, 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 yada. And I was like, okay. Like, and I remember taking that away and I was like, I need to meet more people and I need to develop a community here because no one knows me. You know what I mean? Like I could, like at that time I was still Adam Schindler, Bellator and Strikeforce veteran. And like, but no one here knew that. No one. I was like, oh, I need to like meet people. And watching you, I thought about that a lot, like on my journey, because I worked from home until 2019. And then the pandemic is whenever I went full-time in person as well. So without knowing
what a catalyst, right? The pandemic, like it either broke you or made you, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said this on one of my podcasts before, I kind of miss it sometimes, like, because it was like a pivotal moment in my life that made it better long term.
So it's interesting you say that because when I got offered, okay, let me back up. The whole like me needing male attention, I was in a lot of toxic relationships and a lot of them are actually, they defined my life and my movements through life for a long time. Okay. Which is not a good thing, but also I'm glad that it happened because I made decisions that I think a lot of people would have not made without thinking them out more or like without having the logistics in place where I'm like, I just broke up with this guy. Let me throw all my shit in storage. Oh, you want me to go to Miami on Monday? Let's go. You know, like it propelled a lot of that. So I had like a few relationships that just like went sour. And I actually like, I take full responsibility for that. I think that I have a very addictive personality and I was addicted to the roller coaster ride that is a toxic relationship. But I like didn't want to be in the nightclub anymore. Like, and it was just so hard because I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, this has been my buffer. this has been why I can have one foot in, one foot out. This is why like I don't really have to commit to anything, right? Because like I have this like money just coming in right now. Um, but I wasn't happy there anymore. Like I actually like, and I'm not afraid to say it on air because like I think it's good to burn certain bridges. But like I was drinking at work. Like like I had to be intoxicated to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just see that it was not healthy for me. Like it was just leading me down all these other bad places. And so when I put in my notice at Omnia nightclub, I was just like one of my managers, awesome people that I worked for there, he was like, why don't you just take I think it's called FML or whatever, like family leave of absence or whatever. We can take like a really long absence for like your mental health or whatever. And I had just had someone pass away in a motorcycle accident. So and like I was just like all kinds of distraught. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that because I need to do something drastic right now, you know? If I fail at this, so be it. Like, you know, I feel like the nightclubs, like that business will always be there. At least that's what I thought in my mind at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, no, I'm just gonna quit. So I quit, and then it was hard because even though it was this amazing opportunity, I mean, what I made every 2 weeks being part of the travel team was what I would make sometimes in 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like I was living paycheck to paycheck, like very much so. And so when the pandemic happened and everybody freaked out, by that time, I mean, I had been living paycheck to paycheck since 2017. So like I was like, oh, everybody's feeling the same thing I am. It actually made me feel calmer.
Mm.
It was like the least during the pandemic was the least anxious I had ever been. It also probably helped that I met my husband then during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just like this amazing, like again, non-reactive human being. And that speaks a lot on addiction because I remember when we first started dating and I was like, I cried one day. I'm a crier, but not like in front of other people, just in front of like my husband. And I was just like, I don't think I like you that much. And I really want to like you because like you're just like this calm, peaceful person. I'm like, but I don't feel like these like crazy ups and downs. Like I must not like be that into you. And I just remember he just kissed me on my forehead and he's like, I'm not worried about it. And just like went on doing whatever he was doing in the kitchen. I'm like, guy is a psychopath. Like what is happening? But he just with every single day with his consistency and his like demeanor and he just doesn't react showed me that like I'm like, oh, like all of those things that I thought were love or like no, that was a dopamine addiction. It was an addiction of fighting and like, am I enough? Am I not? Is he cheating on me? Like, did he say, you know, whatever, like, is he going to be in a good mood today? Like all those things like are things that I had felt since I was a little kid watching my parents fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was addicted to that, just like I was addicted to how alcohol makes you feel. Like it's this quick, cheap dopamine rush that like the same reason I'm addicted to working out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think addictions are part of most people's lives. And maybe we don't talk about it in that sense, but like we all need that dopamine. And it's like, where are you going to get your dopamine from though? Is it going to be from a place where it's going to hurt you and the people around you? Or are you going to get it from a place that like is going to be in line with the person that you are growing and evolving into every single day, right?
Right.
So for me, the pandemic was like, I was like, everybody's feeling what I've been feeling, freaking out. Like, so I loved it. Like I would go on these long runs, you know, but then I realized that I wasn't making any money because like I wasn't cocktailing. So I wasn't able to get like these like, what is it called when they give you money, the government?
It's
oh my
unemployment.
God. Unemployment. Yeah. Yes, unemployment. Yeah. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so I'm like, well, just start training people. And like, I was charging like, I think it was $20 a session. So in order to like pay my rent, I was working from 5 a.m. until like 7 or 8 p.m. Client after client after client, maybe 1 hour break to like get food. I was eating while I was training clients.
Where were you doing it?
At Rec Room.
Okay.
I was already working out of Rec Room prior to the pandemic, but I kind of had some clients. When I came back from True Fusion, I got hired as a marketing manager for another fitness place out here called Redemption.
I know that.
And they closed down during the pandemic. And right before the pandemic happened, I had told my boss that I didn't want to be on salary anymore, that I wanted to be an independent contractor. Literally like maybe like 3 months before the pandemic happened. So I literally had like nothing coming in other than like the 3 clients that I had. And those 3 clients, it was all word of mouth. They're like, well, hey, my friend, like their gym closed down. Like everybody wanted to work out. And so I truly built my business during the pandemic. And then once everything started to open up, my schedule was so full that I was able to start increasing my prices so that I could start working less.
Good.
And that's when it all happened. Like I'm so blessed, and I do use that word, and I'm so privileged because some of my clients were lawyers, like business lawyers. So they helped me with my LLC. Like it turned into a business. Whereas before it was like, can you Venmo me my $20? Like, so that's how we got to that. And then meeting my husband and we got engaged and all that is actually what started me back up in competing, because I felt like I was finally in a place where I had consistency. I was anchored. Like I didn't have like all of this crazy drama. And I didn't realize that I missed teaching group classes. And I think that's where the competing came from, is I wanted to be on stage. I like wanted to perform. And I wanted to see what I could do with my body, like with this new discipline. And after all the experiences I'd gone through since like 2012 or 13 when I had first competed, you know, and now being a coach and wanting to be a leader and wanting to set an example to my clients. And I feel like that accountability that there was between like, oh, if I'm going to tell my clients to adhere to this, but they know that I'm training to get my pro card and I don't do the things that I say that they should be doing. Like it was just like this great moment in time for me to really go after that goal, and I accomplished that goal.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So yeah,
congrats on that.
Is that good? I was like, I talk so much about.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's great, and honestly, I've been it flowed well, and it's a great story. Yeah, and congrats on that as well. And I think that being a leader by example is the best way to lead your clientele, and I think because of all the experiences and all the trials and tribulations that you've gone through, and being able to identify and being aware that you have these addictions to highs and lows within relationships, that a lot of people know this about themselves, but are so afraid to admit it and say it. We were talking earlier about how language is so powerful.
Yes. Oh, and that I forgot to talk about that. Yeah.
Now we'll transition to that now.
Cool.
So you do a great job of that. Tell us a little bit more about that. It's neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes, NLP.
NLP. And I think, going back to my original thought, your challenges have led you to have the ability to communicate in a way that people can trust, because you're not full of shit, because they know that you've experienced it, because they know that you live it, and they know that you mean it because of the way that you say it. And tell us a little bit more about how you communicate that in the neuro-linguistic programming, because I truly believe in this as well, but I think you're much more eloquent in the explanation.
Well, okay, here we go. So I first got introduced to NLP, neuro-linguistic linguistic programming, I can't even say NLP. So Gabriella Walters. So that was the first studio where I got certified to teach group fitness classes. I would just, again, an addiction, right? I was dealing with adversity in my life, and I would go in there and I was just doing like 2-3 hot Pilates classes a day. And I happened to just get really close with her and helped her open up her first studio out here. By help, I mean, I was just there. Like I wasn't like helping, but I was like there if she needed to carry boxes or whatever. And when she approached me about becoming an instructor, I'm like, there's no way I can do that. Like I wouldn't even know what to say. And she goes, okay, go sign up. It's the TAD. There's several places you can do it. Like Tony Robbins also uses NLP. There's several like self-growth and self-development companies or workshops or whatever courses that you can do that use NLP. So NLP, I went through the Tad James company. And the biggest thing with NLP is, for example, omitting certain words and replacing them with other words that will get your desired outcome. So it's actually a very manipulative tactic. A lot of politicians use NLP. A lot of celebrities use NLP. They do it with the words that they use and like with their hand movements as well, right? So with NLP, you want to make people feel like they have a choice, right? So you give people options when you cue them to do things, right? So like if I'm like, hey, would you like to have pepperoni pizza today or a margarita pizza? I want pizza. So I'm already winning. It's about being specific, but always making sure that that person feels like they have a choice, right? By doing that, you build something called rapport, which makes people trust you, makes them open to listening to you and to essentially following you. Okay. There are words that they teach us not to use. For example, but, because it has a negative connotation, right? So instead of but, you use and. And I went to the and I need to go to the store. And I would love to go to your party today. And I need to finish this test. So it's not leaving you with like oh, she says she wants to come, but she doesn't really want to come type of thing, right? Or for example, you get to. I'm sure you've probably heard this a lot, right?
I use it all the time.
Right? Like, so you don't have to go to work. You get to go to work. So what NLP is, and those are just some examples of some of the tools that you get to use in order to do NLP. It also uses a bit of hypnotism. So hypnosis, yes. See, this is where you can tell English is my second language. Hypnosis. I don't know that I don't want to say believe, that I necessarily see that being as practical or beneficial. I do believe that in sales, and if you want to just simplify it, in sales or in coaching, NLP is very beneficial because of how you frame things and the words you choose to use. More than that, though, for my own self-growth, right? Using NLP every day for me is something that keeps me doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Because like when no one's at home with me and I just don't feel like it, that's when I start watching what my self-talk is. I get to go do this, or okay, and I'll right away, I know I'm coming up with an excuse. So it's definitely a lot more layered than that, but I'm just trying to simplify it in a way that like, I definitely think that anybody that is striving to be a leader or that is wanting to improve their own self-discipline, whether it's professionally or personally, should at least there's an NLP book that you can just read, should at least read some kind of books that teaches NLP, right? I do think it's very, very much better learned in person, kind of like in that course workshop setting, because there's a lot of like activities and exercises that you get to do with somebody that's a lot more knowledgeable in it.
It's like applying a language.
And I also think that has helped me a lot with my personal relationships, because I can be a hothead and I can be very passionate, as they call it. NLP is a tool that you can use to slow down and communicate in a productive manner with people that might ignite those passionate feelings with you. So yes.
I like that, because you use the word manipulation at first, and absolutely it is, but manipulation can be used for good and for bad.
Yes.
Right. So I think it's like a tool, right? Like fire. Fire can be used to cook a delicious meal, or it can be used to burn down a village. You know, it's based on intent. So when you have the intent to empower rather than manipulate for selfish
To
reasons.
enslave, because I feel like manipulation is, it's like clay. You got to manipulate clay to form it into something, you know? But are you offering freedom or are you offering enslavement, right? I don't want to enslave my clients to me. When my clients sign up with me, I'm like, my goal is for you to one day not need me, not to feel, I don't want you to feel like you need me as your coach. If you want to stay with me, because like I do have clients that they're like, no, you're just part of my day. And they have the budget for it. They have the budget to continue to pay me until they die, probably, you know? That's awesome. Like, good for me, good for you. Like, this is a win-win. However, like, I would love for most of my clients to leave me at some point, to have the confidence to walk into a gym and pick up a barbell and know how to load it, unload it, know how to put the clamp, like, you know, to be empowered, to be able to look at a package of food, usually not packaged because I don't like to push processed food, but to like understand why they want to stay away from inflammatory things, you know? Yes, in the beginning, there's a control aspect that needs to be there of me, like macros or meal plans, or this is your programming I created for you, or you showing up every day, the education part of it, right? So, but at the end of the day, I think, yes, it's all about my intention behind it, because I do know coaches. There's very few of them, thank goodness. But I do know coaches that like are very manipulative and that do want their clients to feel enslaved to them, you know, because that's how they see their business continuing to thrive. And to me, like, that doesn't leave a good feeling inside of me. So yes, I think it's all about intent and like, what are you truly leaving this person with, or even yourself with, enslavement or freedom? Like,
I always say that too. Like the relationships that I curate, my first intention is to teach you to learn how to do this without me. And my second intention is to be so good at it that you don't want to do it without me.
Yes. Okay. I like that.
So that's what I tell my clients.
I like that.
Like, I'm going to teach you how to be self-sufficient, but I want to be so good
that you don't want to be so good. And I
want to be so, there we go. I need to work on that. And I want to be so good that you don't want to do it alone.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's pretty much where NLP came from. It was a huge, something that definitely has shaped how I coach my clients and how I speak to even my friends, like even just personally. I need to be better at it with my personal relationships for sure. I actually ran into this the other day. I'm not great at I embrace confrontation, and I've been working on personally the last like 5 years is understanding that not all people do embrace confrontation, and figuring out how to not just be like, well, if you don't want to talk about it and you don't want to resolve this, then I don't really need you in my life type of thing, right? Especially with friendships, because now it's not the guys. Now I have my husband, we're great. We literally have like no issues, never. It's with like my girlfriends or like with my aunts or like with, you know, it's like most people are not very confrontational. And so I think that I need to revisit NLP more and start implementing it more with my personal relationships.
Do you find that it's easier to do with business because it is business and harder to do with personal relationships because it's more emotional?
And it's more vulnerable.
Okay.
Yes. I have noticed now that I'm in a much like more stable place just in my life in general, that I created a lot of big walls, and vulnerability is something that I feel very uncomfortable in. I went to a rapport training, which is like another self-development class that my IFBB Pro coach, she like encouraged me to go to this. she didn't encourage me by asking. I just saw her sending all her coaches to it. And so I was like, Jamie, I want to go do this thing that you're sending all the people that work for you, like, even though I don't work for you. And she goes, oh my gosh, you should totally do it. And I remember there was this one exercise. Oh, how I dislike these. Like, as soon as they started showing what we're supposed to do, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. I don't need to do this. Where you like just sit in front of the person, you guys just stare at each other and like hold hands. I was just like, no, like, what is happening here? And you're supposed to just like stare at their face and like look at their lines.
Are these like strangers or?
Yes, yes. And the specific group of people that I ended up with, these were a lot of business owners and managers of like textile companies or like trucking companies. Like these are like not like, I don't know how to explain it. Or like managers that manage a bunch of people, but also like I haven't worked for somebody else in so long that I did just, in the beginning, I didn't see how this applied to me. I'm like, I don't need to know how to lead employees. Like I don't have employees, you know, like it's me, my clients, like what I say goes type of thing. When it comes to like how I run my business. And then on like day 3, I'm like, oh, I really needed this. Like, I didn't know I needed this. I needed this because like, for me, it was more about being vulnerable. Like speaking in front of a group of people wasn't intimidating to me. When we had to go up and do like the speaking exercises or whatever, like I kept, even though I did better than everybody else that went before me or after me, my feedback from like the instructors was, okay, Liz, like we think you just phoned that in. And they were like harder on me than everyone else. And I was getting pissed. I'm like, why are you guys being like, I literally crushed it up there. What? Yeah. And what they were trying to do was break me down in a way so I would be angry or be sad. Cause I would just be like, okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah. You know, like that very like
inside your head, you're like, fuck.
Yeah. So, vulnerability. Yeah. So for me, I think that that's why personal relationships are where I am going to be evolving the most in the next few years of my life. It's because they require a lot more vulnerability. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. That's another area for growth too.
Yes.
Beautiful. So I want to talk about one last thing, if you don't mind, before because we got about 5 minutes to go, I think. And I guess it does have something to do with vulnerability too. But I think this can be very important for women in particular, because you went through something this year, implant removal.
Oh yeah, my breast implant removal.
Yeah. Can you talk about the dangers of that, toxicity, the ultimate reason for your decision on that?
Yes.
Because I think that it's really important to hear from someone like you for anyone, because I've since you posted that, I've known like probably 3 different women who had to have like reconstructive, but they just got replacements because of bursts or something that was going wrong with their body.
So breast implant illness, I am not going to sit here and be like, it's a real thing. It's not a real thing. I do have knowledge and understanding, especially from this course I've been in for over a year now, of how our autoimmune system works, right? Our immune reactions. So when there is something foreign in your body, there's a histamine reaction that happens that coats your cells in inflammation, okay? Everybody's baseline for that is different. I was born in Mexico City. I had bad acid reflux or whatever when I was little, a baby, so they gave me a bunch of penicillin. So my microflora in my body is at a different baseline than somebody that didn't go through that, right? I couldn't pinpoint, like there's a whole multitude of symptoms that could be breast implant illness. I can't sit here and be like, I had this horrible thing happen or whatever. I had saline implants put in when I first turned 21. And one encapsulated, it was like up to here. I remember working at Marquee and having to like tie my bathing suit all the way to one side to even them out. And so I got those removed and replaced in 2014 with silicone. So the silicone ones didn't encapsulate, like they sat better. They were a lot smaller. And at the time when I went to go get them replaced, part of me just wanted to remove them altogether. But I just didn't have that confidence to like, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna not have boobs, especially working in the industry. Like there's this look or whatever that I thought was necessary to,
Mhm.
you know, they're my money makers, whatever. Like it
Mhm.
just, I was very nervous about completely removing them. So I didn't, but something in my gut told me that I should have at that time.
Mhm.
When I got into FDN and my husband and I want to have a family now, we've been trying to get pregnant. I just decided that I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the right way. And if I'm sitting here making sure that I'm not eating the foods with the additives and the chemicals and all the crap, and if I'm making sure I'm getting the sleep, and if I'm making sure I'm not drinking the tap water, like if I'm doing all of these things, there's literally something inside of my body that is producing inflammation, whether you've had them for 20 years, 15 years, whether you've had a lot of problems, acute problems, over time, your body's constantly trying to attack these things that don't belong there.
Mhm.
This isn't just for implants. This is for if you have like a plate in your hip or something, you know,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
you have to weigh out the pros and cons of having that thing in there. When I had my implants, after I had my implants removed, even though the healing is tough, I immediately felt better. Like my inflammation, like around my rib cage, like I didn't realize how tiny I actually am, you know? So I'm not surprised that a lot of women are starting to remove them. I think that I don't want to sit here and like fear monger, but like I did a lot of reading during my downtime, even after I did this reading after I got them removed. And in the 60s, there was so much corruption with silicone implants that they literally lied to women and put in like not completely cured implants. Like women got very, very ill because of them, because the FDA was basically not regulating these things how they were supposed to. So they
Mhm.
pulled them. And then it wasn't until the 2000s where they actually started to like allow people to get these silicone implants legally here in the States.
Mhm.
So it's a very new thing. So
Mhm.
I'm not surprised. And I definitely do think, and I'm very passionate about like, just do your research, you
Mhm.
know, because like if it's not normal to feel like shit. Like it's not. Don't let them lie to you and say, "Oh, it's your hormones," or "Oh, you're in perimenopause," or "It's because you had kids." Like it's BS. Um look at like really look at your whole self as an individual, and if you have implants in there, like do your own research, but make an educated decision, because yes, I understand that it's not an easy decision to make. Like there is like a feminine look that like a lot of women like are afraid to lose, but it could also be an opportunity to like find your femininity elsewhere,
Mhm.
like from a different place, right? Um but I do believe that we're going to see a lot more implants being removed, like a lot more, because it's the side, people are like, and doctors will try to say like it's not a real thing. It's science. If you put something foreign in your body, you're going to have a histamine
Mhm.
response. To what extent that's going to affect you depends on your baseline as an individual.
Right.
So
Cool.
definitely get those checked, ladies.
Cool. Well, thank you so much
You're
for speaking
welcome.
on that. I really appreciate it. We've been going for an hour already.
Yeah,
That
this
was
was fun.
fast
It
and
was
fun
fast
and
and
easy
fun.
too.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much
Thank you for
for
having
being
me.
here. Um, I really enjoyed getting to know you better. I know everyone that watches this is going to really enjoy it as well. You speak well. Your stories are just really good and really inspiring. And
Thank
it's
you.
funny too. It's come full circle. I don't know if you remember me asking you that,
No,
but like I think
actually,
about
you were
that at
sitting here
times.
saying that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that happened.
Yeah, it
But
was
I,
like after a class. So
but
like,
on it,
yeah.
and to speak to that just really quickly, I know where it just goes to show how, because I know that I wasn't that present at that time.
Mhm.
So like that's been like that's another thing, is being present, right? And like
Mhm.
I'm so grateful that like you brought that up, because like, and I'm grateful that I said something at that time
Mhm.
that had some kind of positive impact, because like you are an important part of this community, I think, and you're you know, you're bringing people in to talk about like their passions and their businesses. And like I've watched some of your podcasts, and I'm just like, it's an introspective journey to know you're going to be on a podcast talking about yourself, and to sit there and think about like, who am I?
Mhm.
You know, and I'm sure everybody that's sat here in front of you has had to do that. And a lot of them probably haven't done that for a while.
Yeah.
So you're adding a lot of value to this world.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that. Awesome. Well, in the future, nothing but the best moving forward, and we'll do it again someday.
Sounds great. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope you really enjoyed that. I know that you will if you made it this far, and you did. Again, remember always, if you like it, share it with someone who you think that it could help, or someone that would enjoy it. But with that being said, thank you for being here, and we'll be back next week.